The room was full of pregnant women with their husbands. The instructor said, "Ladies, remember that exercise is good for you. Walking is especially beneficial. It strengthens the pelvic muscles and will make delivery that much easier. Just pace yourself, make plenty of stops, and try to stay on a soft surface like grass. Gentlemen, remember, you're in this together. It wouldn't hurt you to go walking with her. In fact, that shared experience would be good for you both." The room suddenly became very quiet as the men absorbed this information. After a few moments, a man, name unknown, at the back of the room slowly raised his hand. "Yes," said the instructor. "I was just wondering if it would be all right if she carries a golf bag while we walk." Brings a tear to your eye, doesn't it?
Adam is playing golf when his phone rings. It's the clubhouse bartender. He tells Adam that the local hospital just called. They're looking for him, as there has been a terrible car accident involving his wife. The bartender tells Adam he needs to get there right away. When Adam arrives at the hospital, he paces in the waiting room for over an hour with horrible images and thoughts running through his head. Finally, the doctor comes out to meet him. The doctor is an old golfing buddy of Adam's. He says, "I'm afraid I've got to deliver some terrible news. Your wife survived, but she's been paralyzed from the neck down. She's going to need someone to feed her, change her clothes, and empty her sanitary bags. She'll need full-time care. You're going to have to give up your golf game and stay home with your wife 24/7. This is awful news. Adam puts his face in his palms and begins to sob and cry. Then the doctor breaks out in laughter and says, "I'm just kidding, man. She's dead."
A burglar breaks into a home and holds the husband and wife in it hostage. At gunpoint, he forces the two to sit on chairs facing the opposite way, back to each other, and ties them to the chairs. The burglar slowly and methodically begins stealing from the house. When the burglar has taken everything of value, he gets ready to leave, the homeowners still bound to their chairs, when suddenly the man yells at the burglar, "Please untie her! Please let her go!" The thief responds with, "No, I'm not untying either of you so that the authorities get notified as late as possible. Don't worry, your neighbors will soon wonder why your lights are still on throughout the night and check in on you long before you succumb to dehydration." The man yet again pleads, "Please just untie her. I'll do anything." The burglar once again explains his reasoning. "I need to get away with this crime. I'm sorry, I can't leave anything up to chance." The man shuffles his chair towards the burglar and in a state of mania exclaims, "I'm begging you, man, just let her go. She won't call the cops, I promise." The burglar, still unwilling to budge, did find it quite touching how much his hostage cared about his wife. "Wow," he said, "you must really love your wife to beg me to untie her so desperately." "No," the man replied in a state of frenzy. "My wife will be home in 15 minutes.
A married couple is lying in bed one night. The wife is curled up, ready to go to sleep, and the husband turns his bed lamp on to read a book. As he's reading, he periodically reaches over to his wife and fondles her special bits. He does this a few times, but only for a very short interval before returning to read his book. The wife gradually becomes more and more aroused, and assuming that her husband is seeking some encouragement before going further, she gets up and starts stripping in front of him. The husband is confused and asks, "Why are you taking off your clothes?" His wife replies, "You were rubbing me downtown. I thought it was foreplay." The husband says, "No, not at all." His wife asks angrily, "Well, what the hell were you doing then?" "I was just wetting my fingers so I could turn the pages in my book."
I was about to propose to my girlfriend when my roommate Joseph barged into the room out of nowhere, tripped, and fell over, breaking a glass table with his face. Totally ruined the mood. Now, I don't know Joseph that well. I don't even remember where he was from. But let's say I put my plans on hold to help him through his injuries. Joseph had gotten a big glass shard in his eye, making him completely blind in that eye.
He was walking around with one of those big cotton pads on his eye for a couple of months. Then suddenly, he disappeared, along with my girlfriend. Apparently, they'd bonded during the time after his injuries and eloped together, leaving me behind without as much as a note. I tried to track him down, but never could. In conclusion, if it hadn't been for Joe with his cotton eye, I'd have been married a long time ago. Where did you come from, and where did you go? Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe?
A 4-year-old kid was at school, and his teacher told him that his homework was to learn the first 4 letters of the alphabet. At home, his mom was on the phone when he asked her what the first letter of the alphabet is, so she said, "Shut up." His dad was watching a football match when the kid asked him about the second letter of the alphabet, so he said, "Yes, yes, yes," because his favorite team had just scored. His brother was playing Batman when the kid asked him what's the third letter of the alphabet was, so he said, "No, Batman!" And the kid went away, happy. His 2 3/4-year-old sister was playing with her dolls when he asked her about the fourth letter of the alphabet, so she said, "On my voom voom car." The next day at school, when his teacher asked him for the first letter of the alphabet, he said, "Shut up." So the teacher asked him if he wanted to go to the principal's office, and he said, "Yes, yes, yes." At the principal's office, the principal asked him, "Who do you think you are?" And the kid replied, "No, Batman." So the principal said, "How are you going to get out of this mess?" And the kid replied, "On my voom voom car." A man driving down the street sees a penguin on the side of the road. Apologies in advance for spelling and grammar as I'm on my phone. A man is driving down the street and sees a penguin on the side of the road. Curious, he decides to pull over and pick it up. About that time, a local police officer sees the two of them and decides to pull behind him as he's loading the penguin up. "Just what do you think you're doing with that penguin?" the officer demanded. "I haven't a clue what to do with him. I just saw him on the side of the road and figured I'd pick him up," the man replied. "Well, I suggest you take him straight to the zoo," the officer suggested. So the man agrees and takes off heading toward the zoo. The next day, the officer is at his post when he sees the same guy in the same car driving by with the same penguin. He immediately hits the flashers and pulls the man over. "Hey, pal, I thought I made it clear yesterday to take this penguin straight to the zoo," the officer stated. "Yeah, we did that yesterday. Today, I'm taking him to the ball game." The nurse asked the patient to remove his clothing and put on a gown to be checked by a doctor. "In front of you?" he asks, shyly. The nurse says, "Well, no, but I've seen the naked human body before." The patient said, "Not one like mine. You would die laughing at my naked body." "Of course I won't laugh," said the nurse to the patient. "I am a professional. In over 20 years, I have never laughed at a patient." "Okay then," said the patient, and he proceeded to drop his trousers, revealing a huge male body with the smallest adult male organ the nurse had ever seen in her life. In length and width, it was almost identical to a AAA battery. Unable to control herself, the nurse tried to stop a giggle, but it just came out. And then she started laughing at the fact that she was laughing. Feeling very bad that she had laughed at the patient's private part, she composed herself as well as she could. "I am so sorry," the nurse said. "I do not know what came over me. On my honor as a nurse and a lady, I promise that it won't happen again. Now tell me, what seems to be the problem?" "It's swollen," the patient replied.
Every year, Earl and his wife Edna went to the state fair. And every single year, Edna would say, "Earl, I really want to ride that helicopter." And every year, Earl would shake his head and say, "I know, Edna, but that helicopter ride is $50, and $50 is $50. This went on for years. Finally, on their visit at age 85, Edna said, "Earl, I'm not getting any younger. If I don't ride that helicopter now, I may never get another chance." Earl sighed. "I understand, honey, but that ride is still $50.
and $50 is $50. The pilot overheard them and said, "Tell you what, I'll take both of you for a ride. If you can stay completely silent the whole time, it's free. But if either of you makes a sound, it's $50. Earl and Edna looked at each other, nodded, and climbed aboard. The pilot took off and did every trick in the book: twists, turns, nosedives, loops, but not a single peep came from the back seat. After they landed, the pilot turned around and said, "I've got to say, I'm impressed. I pulled every stunt I could, and you didn't make a sound." Edna smiled and said, "Well, I almost said something when Earl fell out, but you know, $50 is $50.
One Sunday morning, the Pope wakes up and heads to the bathroom. To his surprise, he notices he's dealing with some rather impressive mourning wood. Realizing he can't possibly lead the Sunday service in his current state, he decides to take a little detour. Later that day, after delivering a powerful sermon, he returns home to find a note pinned to his door. It reads, "I saw what you did and I've got pictures. Pay me $25,000 or I'll expose you." After much contemplation, the Pope reluctantly decides to pay the extortionist. The Pope meets the man, hands over the money, and in exchange, the man gives him everything: pictures, film, negatives, and even the camera. The Pope burns everything, keeping only the camera as a reminder of his lapse in judgment. As he walks through the Vatican, the Pope is approached by a tourist who notices the camera around his neck. "Excuse me, Your Holiness," the tourist says, "that's an incredible camera you have there. If you don't mind me asking, how much did it cost?" The Pope sighs and replies, "It cost me $25,000. The tourist raises an eyebrow and says, $25,000? Well, I guess that's what happens when someone really knows how to take advantage of a situation.
The wife brings home a street cat, but the husband absolutely hates it. One day, he decides to take the cat for a walk and leaves it a few blocks away from their house. When he arrives home, he's shocked to find the cat already there, happily eating the food the wife had set out for it. Furious, he takes the cat again and rides his bike several miles away, making sure to leave it in a completely different area. When he returns home, he's beyond frustrated. "How the hell did this cat find its way back so quickly?" he mutters. The wife just shrugs and gets ready for bed. The cat yawns and settles in comfortably. But before it can relax too much, the man, fuming with rage, grabs the cat, tosses it into his car, and drives off. "Let's see you find your way back this time," he says, determined to end the madness once and for all. He drives through the night, crossing towns and winding back roads. After what feels like forever, he finally stops in the middle of nowhere and tosses the cat out of the car. "That's it. There's no way the cat will find its way back now," he thinks smugly as he heads home. Several hours later, the wife gets a phone call from the husband. "Is that damn cat there yet?" he growls. "Yeah, he's eating lunch with me in the kitchen right now," she replies. The husband, utterly defeated, grumbles, "Put the damn cat on the phone. I need directions to get back home."
A man in a hot air balloon realizes he's lost. He lowers the balloon's altitude and spots a woman below. He descends a little more and shouts, "Excuse me, can you help me? I promised a friend I would meet him an hour ago, but I have no idea where I am." The woman looks up and says, "You're in a hot air balloon hovering about 30 feet above the ground. You're between 40 and 41 degrees north latitude and between 59 and 60 degrees west longitude." The balloonist, a little taken aback, says, "You must be a programmer." "I am," replies the woman. "How did you know?" "Well," says the balloonist, "everything you told me is technically correct, but I still have no idea where I am, and honestly, I'm more lost than ever. Frankly, you haven't been much help." The woman responds, "You must be a manager." "I am," says the balloonist, "but how did you know?" "Well," she says with a smile, "you don't know where you are, where you're going, or how to get there. You got up here thanks to a lot of hot air. You made a promise you have no clue how to keep, and now you expect me to solve your problem. The reality is you're in exactly the same position you were in before we met, and somehow it's my fault."
A man stands in court, facing serious charges. The judge begins, "On the 3rd of August, you are accused of killing your wife by beating her to death with a hammer. How do you plead?" "Guilty," says the man in the dock. Suddenly, a voice from the back of the courtroom shouts, "You dirty rat!" The judge bangs his gavel. "Order! Sir, if you interrupt again, I'll have you removed." The judge continues, "And on the 17th of September, you are also accused of killing your son, again with a hammer. How do you plead?" "Guilty," the man replies calmly. The same voice erupts again, louder this time. "You dirty, rotten, stinking rat!" The judge, now irritated, calls the man to the bench. "I've already warned you. Another outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. I understand your emotions, but what is your connection to the accused?" The man replies, "He's my next-door neighbor." "I see," says the judge. "That explains your outrage, but you still must remain silent." The man shakes his head. "No, Your Honor, you don't understand. I've asked to borrow a hammer twice, and both times he said he didn't have one." Several years ago, Andy was sentenced to prison. During his time, he got along well with the guards and his fellow inmates. The warden saw that Andy had a good heart and made arrangements for him to learn a trade while serving his sentence. After 3 years, Andy became one of the best carpenters in the area. He was often given weekend passes to do odd jobs for the local community, and he always made sure to report back to the prison by Sunday night. The warden, who had been remodeling his kitchen, found himself stuck. He had done most of the work himself, but lacked the skills to build a set of kitchen cupboards and a large countertop, a project he had promised his wife. So he called Andy into his office and asked him to complete the job for him. To the warden's surprise, Andy refused. "I'd love to help you, warden," Andy said, "but counterfeiting is actually what got me into prison in the first place."
Fresh out of the shower, a woman stood naked in front of the mirror, examining herself with a frown. "Ugh, my breasts are too small," she sighed, turning to her husband for reassurance. Instead of offering a sweet compliment, he glanced up from his book and said, "Well, if you want them to grow, take a piece of toilet paper and rub it between them for a few seconds, 3 times a day." She raised an eyebrow. "Toilet paper? Really?" "Yep, just be consistent, and over the years they'll get bigger." Skeptical but willing to try anything, she grabbed a few sheets of toilet paper and started rubbing. "How long will this take?" she asked, still working at it. Without even looking up, her husband smirked and said, "Well, it worked for your ass, didn't it?"
One morning at a doctor's clinic, a patient arrives complaining of serious back pain. The doctor examines him and asks, "Tell me, what happened to your back?" The patient replies, "Sir, I work for a local nightclub. This morning I went to my apartment early and heard some noise in my bedroom. On entering, I knew someone had been with my wife, and the balcony door was open. I rushed out of the balcony door and did not find anyone. As I looked down from the balcony, I saw a man running out and he was dressing himself. I was very angry. I grabbed the fridge and threw it at him. It was very heavy. That was how I strained my back." Later that day, a second patient arrives, and he appears to have been in a car wreck. The doctor said, "My previous patient looked bad, but you look terrible. What the hell happened to you?" He replied, "You know, I have been unemployed for a while now.
Today was the first day at my new job. I forgot to set my alarm and I was late. I was running out of the building, getting dressed at the same time, and you won't believe it. I was hit by a fridge. I don't know how the fridge fell on me or where it came from. Before closing hours, the third patient came in. He looks like he was punished in hell. The doctor is shocked. He asked, "What the hell happened to you?" The patient replies, "Well, it started like this. I was hiding in a fridge."
So, a woman brought a very limp parrot into a veterinary hospital. As she lay her pet on the table, the vet pulled out his stethoscope and listened to the bird's chest. After a moment or two, the vet shook his head sadly and said, "I'm so sorry. Polly has passed away." The distressed owner wailed, "Are you sure? I mean, you haven't done any testing on him or anything. He might just be in a coma or something." The vet rolled his eyes, shrugged, turned, and left the room, returning a few moments later with a beautiful black Labrador. As the bird's owner looked on in amazement, the dog stood on his hind legs, put his front paws on the examination table, and sniffed the dead parrot from top to bottom. He then looked at the vet with sad eyes and shook his head. The vet led the dog out, but returned a few moments later with a cat. The cat jumped up and also sniffed delicately at the ex-bird. The cat sat back, shook its head, meowed, and ran out of the room. The vet looked at the woman and said, "I'm sorry, but like I said, your parrot is most definitely 100% certifiably dead." He then turned to his computer terminal, hit a few keys, and produced a bill which he handed to the woman. The parrot's owner, still in shock, took the bill. $150, she cried. $150 just to tell me my bird is dead? The vet shrugged. If you'd taken my word for it, the bill would only have been $20. But with the lab report and the CAT scan, what did you expect? A man has his mother-in-law move in with him when she loses her job. About a week later, he returns home from his job and finds her lying on the floor, unconscious. He calls 911. The ambulance comes and takes her off to the hospital. He calls his wife and tells her she may have to cut her business trip short, but he'll keep her posted. He gets to the hospital and waits outside the surgery, nervous and pacing. Soon, the doctor comes out and says he has some good news and some bad news. Give me the bad news first, Doc. Well, your mother-in-law had a massive stroke. She's lost her ability to speak and can only cackle like a chicken. The man nods his head. She's also lost all motor control to her arms and legs, so not only won't she be able to walk, she won't even be able to feed herself. You'll have to feed her baby food for the rest of her life, every day, 3 times a day. Somberly, the man nods, so the doctor continues. Without any motor control, she'll also be incontinent, so she'll have to wear diapers for the rest of her life. You'll have to clean her and put a new diaper on her several times a day for the rest of her life. The man nods, processing all this information in his brain, then looks to the doctor and asks, "That's some pretty bad news, but you said you had some good news? What's the good news?" "The good news is, I'm just joking with you. She died."
An old hillbilly farmer had a wife who nagged him unmercifully. From morning till night, she was always complaining about something. The only time he got any relief was when he was out plowing with his old mule. He tried to plow a lot. One day when he was out plowing, his wife brought him lunch in the field. He drove the old mule into the shade, sat down on a stump, and began to eat his lunch. Immediately, his wife began nagging him again. Complain, nag, it just went on and on. All of a sudden, the old mule lashed out with both hind feet and caught her smack in the back of the head, killed her dead on the spot. At the funeral, several days later, the minister noticed something rather odd. When a woman mourner when he approached the old farmer, he would listen for a minute, then nod his head in agreement. But when a male mourner approached him, he would listen for a minute, then shake his head in disagreement. This was so consistent, the minister decided to ask the old farmer about it. So after the funeral, the minister spoke to the old farmer and asked him why he nodded his head in agreement with the women, but always shook his head and disagreed with all the...
A woman seated while flying in economy and holding her baby in her arms was startled when the man sitting behind her bent forward to say, "Ma'am, that is one ugly baby you have there." The woman, wide-eyed and open-mouthed, was so shocked she could barely retort, "Well, I never." The man continued, "I'm just being honest with you, ma'am. I mean, I've seen some ugly babies in my time, but yours is a real showstopper." Quite overwhelmed, the woman called a flight attendant over. "The man behind me just hurled the most hideous insult at me, and I demand to be moved to a different seat," she said. The attendant gave her a consoling look of sympathy. "I'm so sorry, but as you know, our flight is fully booked, and until we find someone willing to switch seats, I'm afraid I won't be able to reseat you. We do apologize, however, and if you like, in the meantime, we'd be happy to offer you anything from our in-flight menu free of charge." "Fine," the woman said with an air of resignation, "but I've never been so insulted in all my life. What a horrible man!" "Well, I just said the truth," could be faintly heard from the seat behind. Hearing that, the attendant resolved to make the woman feel better as soon as possible, telling her, "Any item of food or any alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverage, whatever you choose, it's on us," she said. "And if you like, I'll also bring a banana for your comfort monkey." It was an ordinary morning at the town library when something rather unusual happened. A chicken strutted through the doors, hopped up onto the front desk, and looked the librarian square in the eye. "Book, book, book," the chicken clucked. The librarian, though surprised, was not one to turn away a curious mind, feathered or otherwise. She handed over a couple of novels, and the chicken carefully tucked them under its wing before waddling out the door. Curious, the librarian watched as the chicken crossed the street, marched through a nearby field, and disappeared over a hill. The next day, just as she was shelving some classics, the chicken returned. It dropped the borrowed books onto the desk with a soft thud and clucked, "Book, book, book, book." The librarian, still baffled but amused, gave it a few more books. Once again, the chicken took them and headed off in the same direction. By the third day, the librarian's curiosity got the better of her. When the chicken appeared once more, this time clucking, "Book, book, book," she decided to get to the bottom of things. As soon as the chicken left, she grabbed her coat and followed. Across the street, through the field, and down the hill she went, keeping a safe distance. At the bottom of the hill, she reached a small pond, its surface calm and dotted with lily pads. Sitting on a rock at the water's edge was the largest frog she had ever seen. The chicken waddled up to the frog, carefully laid the books down at its feet, and clucked eagerly, "Book, book, book." The frog gave a slow, thoughtful nod, then extended a webbed foot, flipped through the stack, and croaked, "Read it, read it, read it." A lady goes to her priest one day and tells him, "Father, I have a problem. I have 2 female parrots, but they only know how to say one thing." "What do they say?" the priest inquired. "They say, 'Hi, we're hookers. Do you want to have some fun?'" "That's obscene," the priest exclaimed. Then he thought for a moment. "You know," he said, "I may have a solution to your problem. I have 2 male talking parrots, which I have taught to pray and read the Bible. Bring your 2 parrots over to my house, and we'll put them in the cage with Francis and Job. My parrots can teach your parrots to praise and worship, and your parrots are sure to stop saying that phrase in no time." "Thank you," the woman responded. "This may very well be the solution." The next day, she brought her female parrots to the rectory. As the priest ushered her in, she saw that his 2 male parrots were inside their cage, holding rosary beads and praying. Impressed, she walked over and placed her parrots in with them. After a few minutes, the female parrots cried out in unison, "Hi, we're hookers. Do you want to have some fun?"
There was stunned silence. Shocked, one male parrot looked over at the other male parrot and said, "Put your rosary beads away, Frank. Our prayers have finally been answered."
A down-and-out guy looking for work applied at a zoo. The zoo didn't have any openings, but the keeper offered the guy an unusual position. It seems that the zoo's star gorilla had died suddenly, and since it was the main attraction, the zoo didn't want to release the information until a new gorilla had been procured. So the zoo offered the guy a temporary job as a gorilla, in a costume of course, just until they could get a replacement animal. The man spent a full day getting used to his costume and learning how to act and how to move like a gorilla. The most important thing, his trainer said, is that you must never ever break character. Nobody can ever know that you aren't the real gorilla. In the enclosure, the guy was fantastic. He mimicked the gorilla so well that nobody suspected a thing. One day, he swung a little too high and went over the wall, landing in the lion's enclosure. With the large, ferocious beast stalking him and licking its chops, our gorilla guy frantically searched for an escape. He ran, and of course, the lion immediately gave chase. Around and around they went, with the lion gaining ground, and finally, the desperate gorilla, fearing for his life, decided to break character. So he shouted, "Help! Help!" Immediately behind him, he heard the lion growl, "Shut up! Do you want to get us both fired?"